G'day guys, and welcome back to part 2 of how to bed your Cz455. First of all guys, we'll start off with what we're going to have to do here is we're going to have to remove the magazine well and the trigger on our Cz455. To do that, you're going to need a few things. First, as you can see here, I've got a towel down on the bench. You're also going to need another towel, and I'll explain why in a minute. The other thing you're going to need is a container to seal your parts in so that you can't, lose your parts, because one of these small parts that we'll be removing from the trigger group in a moment has a very small ball bearing in it, and hence the reason why this is the reason why we've got the towel down, and the other towel will be to put behind the action when we go to drive the trigger pins out. The other thing you're going to need is you're going to need a pin punch set of various sizes and a brass and nylon punch hammer. The other thing you're going to need is you're going to need something in which to remove the magazine well, which I have here, just my Wheeler Engineering fat wrench, firearms accurizing torque wrench. So that's what we'll be removing with. Alright guys, I'm going to take the camera off the stand, and I'm going to mount it to my head so I can try and get a close-in view of everything that I'm doing, so you can see nice and close. Again, this will probably be a long-winded video. Sorry for the, if it's a little bit long, but I just want to go really into depth and show you guys that it's not that hard. You can do it yourself. It just takes a little bit of time and a bit of patience, and you can do this yourself. So, alright guys, I'll set the camera back up in a second, and we'll get started again. Okay guys, so here we have our Cz455. The first thing we're going to do is remove the magazine well. Now, your normal Allen wrench that comes with the actual rifle for undoing your barrel screws also will undo your mag well. So we're just going to remove the mag well. Just crack those. Now, you're going to remove the mag well for a couple of reasons. You can leave the mag well in if you really want to, but it is a whole lot easier by removing the mag well. We just have to make up some dams to fill the slots where this was. The main issue with leaving the mag well in is the mag well creates a chance for too many for lock points, where it could cause your rifle in action to lock into your stock when we go to bed it. So we want to remove that. Okay. So that's the mag well removed. Now we can start on the trigger. Now, just underneath this pin here, guys, there is a slight spring and a ball, and you'll notice this in a minute when we knock this out. The reason why we have this other rag here is because we want to ball this up into a bunch. And we want to sit that behind it, because if you rest that hard on the actual bench, the chances of breaking the trigger are pretty easy. So you want to try and build up a bit of resistance, a bit of padding behind that. Then you want to take your brass hammer, and we're just going to find a punch that is going to suit our pin style, which we have here. Okay, so here we go guys. Now this is the same as if you were to try to remove your actual trigger to change the spring. If you were to put a Yo-Dave trigger kit in, we'd only knock out this back pin, and by knocking out this back pin allows the trigger assembly to pivot away, and you can change the spring over and put your lighter spring in. So we'll start off by starting to drive this pin out. Now the main thing is here, guys, is to stop once you've driven through so far. Check the back side. Now we're going to continue to drive that pin completely out. Just make sure that that pin is being driven out nice and evenly. You want to make sure that you're completely square on the pin as you go to drive it out, because if you turn around and have too much pressure, you can turn around and you can easily, if this is not completely square, you can start to drive the pin out unsquare, and you'll actually try and bend your trigger itself. So we're just gonna drive that out all the way. That's one pin removed. Now we can remove the pin, and as you see, as soon as I remove that whole assembly floats back. That's your spring. Your spring will go down into that recess location, which I'll show you a bit more in a moment. So we'll just put that spring in there. Now here's the tricky section, guys. Now we're going to remove the other roll pin. And the other roll pin should come out quite easily. Now you don't have to knock that completely out. You can still leave it in. And as you can see, you can just pull it out. Now, when you do your, if you were to have creep in your trigger, this is the section of the, this front roll pin is where you would normally put the larger barrels that you get with the Odove trigger kit to take some of the creep out of your trigger. But because the Cz455s are quite good, they don't normally need that. Okay, here's the tricky part. As you can see here, we have to try and knock the pin out for the sear engagement. So this is where it gets a little bit tricky. This is under quite a fair amount of tension, and when you knock this out, you'll notice in a minute, I'll show you, that there's a ball in here once you knock this pin out. Okay, that's the last pin removed. Now, when you go to remove this sear, or go to remove the pin punch, make sure you hold pressure here, because as soon as you remove that, you'll notice here there's a small ball bearing. There's also a very small spring just there, which holds that ball bearing in place. Now that ball bearing, like it normally does, has rolled out onto the cloth. Now that's the reason why we turn around and and use the cloth to catch that. If that was just a roll on the desk, it'd fall on the floor and you'd never find it again. When it comes time to put this in, I use a technique with a toothpick, half a toothpick, to basically locate it, put it in a position. I sit the toothpick in, and then I can turn around and then take my pin and then slowly drive my pin through, knocking the bit of toothpick out and driving the pin all the way home. Okay, so now you've got your action. There it is. It's all ready to rock and roll. The first thing we need to do, guys, is we now start to making up some dams to fill some voids that we don't want putty to or the bedding compound to get into. So we'll just chuck that back over One of there. Okay. Now, first thing you'll notice is you've got your throat is right there. So we're just going to turn it over. Now, what we're going to do, guys, is we're going to take a little bit of newspaper here, and I like to use newspaper because that way I don't like to get this modelling clay which we're about to fill these gaps with. I don't like to get that anywhere near my rifling or anything else. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a bit of newspaper first as a bit of a backing. Okay, so we're going to force that into there. We're going to crunch that down in as much as we can. Okay, now what we're going to do now, guys, is we're going to take our tub of modelling clay. Now, I suggest if you can't get modelling clay, whatever you do, don't use Play-Doh. Use plasticine, which is a little bit harder, but don't use Play-Doh. If you use Play-Doh, Play-Doh will cause you an issue. When I done it last time round, that's exactly what I used, and I had an issue here where when I turned and seated the action into the stock, I had some of the I had these voids filled right up, and I had part of the bedding compound leach over into this section in here, causing a major trap point. And I was lucky that I caught it quite rather quickly, or otherwise I would have never have got my my action out of the stock again. So be very careful as to what you do in this area. Make sure that you use plenty of modelling clay like this. Just push it down in there. We just want to fill those voids. You know, this is not too much of a mission to clean up once you're done. Take a little bit of fiddling, but the main thing is we want to fill all these voids. And really push it down in there, because unless you push it down in there nice and hard, when you go to turn and put the action in, there's a chance for that to happen if you haven't got you know, enough in there. So there's no room for the compound to push, creating a trapping point there. The other thing we're going to do this time around, though, because we can here and get away with it, is we're actually going to put a little bit of electrical tape, and we're going to run a bit of electrical tape along that section, all along here where we have these trap points, just to make sure that we don't have any compound leach into there whatsoever. So you want to make sure you fill that up as much as you can, turn it over, take your rip some of that newspaper out. Actually, we've got a little bit too much of that in there. Actually, we won't worry about the newspaper. I'll push my bronze brush through this when I'm done, just to remove any garbage that we get in there. So you want to make sure you fill your this up as much as possible. You also want to make sure that you fill right round the edge here as well, just because this will also become a trap point. If when you try and drop your action back into the stock, if any compound can leach over onto that edge, you're going to trap your action into your stock. So you want to make sure that you well and truly remove that as much as you can. Okay, fill any other hole that you see. Now we're going to leave the action screw holes here and here because we'll be putting some threaded rod into those. But as far as all the little grooves here are, we're going to completely fill those. Same with our screws on either end where our barrel is held in place. We're going to fill those either end as well. Now what I'll do, guys, I'll just stop the camera for a minute, otherwise this is going to take a little while. So I'll get this done and I'll come back on to the next part, which will be making the voids and everything on the stock. So I'll be back in a little while. Okay guys, so as you can see, we've now filled up all those holes except for the screw holes. We've got a little bit that bled through there, but that's okay. When we screw our threaded bar into there shortly, that'll push that up through, that's not a problem. But as you can see, this section here is the section I'm talking about, which can really create a bad pinch point. That's why I put a little bit of tape there. You also need to put a little bit of tape over the front where your gas port is on the side as well, so that you don't end up with any in there as well. So that's that pretty much done. Now we're going to go onto the stock. And before we can make our dams in our stock, the first thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to take some tape, some masking tape, and you're going to want to have to follow the entire line of the top of the stock all the way along, because once this bedding compound has gone in and is cured, when you break the barrel action out, you're going to end up with this little ridge of bedding compound that's sitting along the top here. So the idea of the tape, and I also use electrical tape as well on top of the masking tape, so that when I break the barrel action out and I go to sand, I can sand then the top of the action there to bring the bedding down flush with the actual top of the timber work, without actually cutting into the timber work with my sandpaper. So I'll just go on and do that now, and I'll come back and I'll show you once it's all done, and then I'll go and explain what I've done and why. Okay guys, so as you can see, I've taped up pretty much. I haven't worried about the bottom part too much about the stock, because I'm not really going to get any there. The main part, like I say, we wanted electrical tape, is around the edge on the top here, and we wanted our tape, you know, along the top there like that. As you can see, I've filled in the gaps in here with modelling clay, same as the gap where your bolt lock, your bolt locks over. You're going to fill that as well, because otherwise, you know, you're going to end up getting compound that's going to leach down over into there, and then it's going to turn around and it's just going to make it more of a, you know, mess to clean up at the end. You could let it go and then just turn around and you know, clean it up with a bit of paper and a file, but it's, you know, it's a bit of a tedious job, and it can take a little bit of while. So as you can see, we're pretty much there, all set and done. The only thing I've got to do now is just clean out some of this extra crud that I've got in here, which I'll do again in a minute. And then once that's done, guys, I'll get onto the part where we can down to the good bit, and that's taking a look at actually starting to bed the action. So I'll pick it back up in a minute. The only thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to put my threaded rod into the bottom of my action, and then I'll explain when we go into the next process, once I get everything set up again, exactly what we're going to do from there. So as you can see, those dams are full underneath as well, as much as you can. You know, we're not too worried about it. You don't have to go too crazy with it, just so long as they fill most of those voids and stops. What that does is stops the compound from pouring down into that gap, and having a little bit of room to move. As you can see, it drops away a bit there. Having that little bit of room to move will allow that little bit of pressure as we go to drop that in to take up a little bit of that room and allow for the squeeze out without pushing too much onto the actual the clay and causing it to force up and force the actual bedding compound up into those locations on the action where we don't really want them. So I'll just do a final cleanup and get ready for the last bit of the process, which will be mixing up the bedding compound and putting it all into place. Alright guys, I'll be back in a moment. Okay guys, so we're all set, ready to go. You'll notice a couple of things hanging out of the bottom of the stock there, and what they are, they're McDonald's straws that I've slit down the middle, and I've fitted down the inside of the pillars. I'll show you that in the middle in a minute. And what the idea of that is so I can fill the compound up in that void without it leaking down into those holes. And as you can see here, I've got my threaded rod into there. I bought some threaded rod. It's actually 6mm threaded rod for you guys who are wishing to do this, so save you the hassle of trying to get your local bolt guy to figure out what sort of rod it is. It's just mild steel 6mm rod. And what we're basically going to do, guys, is once we pour that compound in, once we mix it up, those two straws are going to add as guides. And what's going to happen is we're going to use those two straws to line up exactly where our holes are, so that when we push those through, we'll get very, very minimal amount of actual compound that'll actually go down into those holes. Now, what we're going to do here is we're about to try and put our release agent over the action, and our release agent is just store-bought Kiwi boot polish, and you just dab it on all the areas that, you know, may come in contact with the adhesive. We're also going to put a whole bunch of it on the threads as well. That way, once the action is ready to be taken out of the stock, once the bedding has set, what we'll do is we'll then turn around and break out. We'll undo these threaded rods when that comes time, so I'll explain that later and why I do that later on. But for now, I'll just show you this process here, which is just dabbing this on. Just put a heap of it on the threaded bar here as well, because you don't want this filling up full of glue and locking into place. You know, it can be a bit of a mongrel to get them out. I mean, you're going to need a pair of vice grips to get these out when it comes time to taking them out anyway, as it is. But we're just going to get that done. So that's that done. Okay, we're just going to put that over the side, at the back there, at the way. And we're now going to go on to mixing the bedding compound. The other thing you're going to need for this, guys, is for a little bit of cleanup, is going to be some cotton wool buds. The other thing we're going to do right now to aid in the process of cleanup, so we're going to take a bit more tape again, and that tape we're going to just put along top like that, same on the other side. And that little wing that we've got there off the side, when we drop the barrel action into the stock, that squeeze out that we get out the side will run down over that little bit of a wing that we got and acts as a bit of a catch. What I'll then do to make it easier on myself is then, on the cleanup process, is just then tear that wing off. All that muck and goo will come with it. Be able to drop it in the bottom of my range box, and then I can start to get my cotton wool buds and start the process of just starting to clean that little bit of excess off. So we'll just put that little bit of a wing on the side. We're not too worried about the rear because we're going to be cotton wool bud on that and clean that up. Okay, that's that done. Now guys, the compound I'm actually using, or the epoxy I'm using, is a Permatex 30-minute epoxy. Now this stuff, when it dries semi-clear. So what I've done to add a little bit of colour is, when I channeled out my the inside of my rifle stock, I collected some of the timber dust left over from that to mix in with this epoxy, so that we retain a little bit of that original colour. So we'll just squeeze that out into there. Now we're going to use the whole lot of this. So as you can see, we're slowly starting to mix that in. It's getting that bit of a chocolatey colour about it because of the dust we got from the stock, and that'll also aid in as a bit of extra texture as well, you know, to so we'll just give this a real good mix up. As you can see, we've got that deep rich colour in there. Great thing is with this half-hour epoxy is you've got plenty of time to play with it, because it doesn't set for quite a while. It is quite runny, which is not too bad because it's kind of what we want. Okay, so we've got that semi-mixed. Now the first areas we're going to fill up here, guys, is going to be around the back section here, because this is what's going to take up a lot of your compound right here. This is going to take up a lot of compound, this section. Also around the front is going to take up a lot of compound as well, and we may need to mix up more of this yet, but we'll see how we go. Just want to make sure you fill all those voids. Pour all the glue into that. Now we want to try and avoid as much as we can of that getting too far forward of the so we're just going to bring that up the sides there. Okay, we're going to need to mix up a little bit more of this, so I'm just going to open up a another one here. Bit of a mess in the old reloading room at the moment, but nevertheless, that's how it goes when we're always mucking around with firearms and whatnot. We always seem to get a little bit of a mess. All right. Sorry if the lighting isn't too crash hot here, guys, but we'll see what we can do. Just give that a bit of, as you can see, that sort of mixes up quite clear. I'm not too overly worried about how it's moved forward there at the front, because I can sand that flat anyway, so it's not too much of a drama. So we'll just put the rest of this compound in. Okay. Just want to try and get a little bit of that, as much as we can, into those voids. As we push this down in, this will start to squeeze out up the top. I just want to make sure we get a little bit on there first. Just, we've got something there to start with. As we squeeze out, we'll end up with more of that. Okay. Alright guys, now comes the fun part. Now we can take our action, and because we got those guides there, that'll allow us now to work that down in there. And as you can see, we've got a bit of squeeze out starting to happen around the sides. So I'm going to let that sit now, and I'm going to put my bottom metal up and on. We've got a washer there. Put a washer on, and we'll put on the nut. I'll show you that in a moment. You might not be able to see it, probably seeing more of the side than anything else, so I'll just get this and then I'll show you that part in a second. Nut just wants to be a bit of a mongrel at the moment. Come on. Seems like we got a bit of a burr on that thread. Not to worry, we'll just get the other one started, and then I can use the shifter there to pull it up tight. Like I said, it's a little bit of a messy process, but once you're done, you're pretty well good. Now, I think once we get this nut started, it won't be so bad. Here we go. Now that we have that nut started, so as you can see, guys, I'm just slowly doing this nut up, and this will slowly pull my my action exactly into place where I want it, nice and tight. Okay, now we're just going to take that strip off. Like I said, we just drop that in there. That's getting rid of most of the squeeze out. Drop that in there again. That's got rid of most of the squeeze out. Now it's just been a bit of a shit to get to this bolt here, so I'm just going to tip it up and access it from underneath. Okay. There we go. Now it's sitting in there. Okay, so now we can put a little bit of tension on that bolt. Same with the rear. Okay guys, that's about all the tension that we need on that. So we're now just going to take our Q-tips. As you can see, we've got a fair bit of squeeze out now. The main thing is here with this is do not let it get over the edge like it is there. Okay, that there is a major trap point, and if you leave that, you almost definitely trap your action into your stock. So we're just gonna take that top edge off. That glue is starting to set, so I'm going to have to work pretty quickly from here. Take a while yet to fully set, but just want to make sure that put as much as that around those trap points as I can get rid of. Swing the rifle around. Okay. And we're just going to do the same here. Just get rid of all that excess. Like I say, here is a trap point, so you want to make sure you get rid of it around any trap points, anywhere where it comes over the center of the action is a trap point that if you don't address straight away, it can cause you issues when you go to break it out of the break the action out of the stock again. So there we have it, guys. That's pretty much it. All we need to do now is just let this sit overnight. This stuff, like I say, it dries reasonably quick. So we're going to let this sit overnight, and because we've got all that release agent on, the cleanup won't be too bad when it comes time to doing the cleanup and the actual sanding of the top of the stock and the bedding. Want to take most of that tape off. A lot of that crap that's coming over the edge will come with it. So anyway, guys, we'll leave that there for now for like that for about a day or so. I'll come back tomorrow and I'll take it up and I'll show you the actual breaking out process of breaking the action out of the stock, and the cleanup process after that. So that's it, guys. It's as simple as that. It takes all of probably, you know, the most time in it out of the whole process is making all your dams, doing your sanding, doing everything else. You know, mixing your compound, putting your compound in is bugger all work. It's not much at all to do. The main thing is just that cleanup so that you don't completely trap your action into your stock. More finer detail underneath where I showed you on the bottom of the action where is a common pinch point, or and that was a pinch point problem for me the first time I bedded this rifle. I actually noticed the actual putty rise quite a fair bit. In doing that, I pulled the Play-Doh out, and I noticed that the compound had leached up into my action, but that's only due to how soft the Play-Doh was. The Play-Doh is you know, nowhere near as malleable. This stuff here starts to dry pretty quick and goes solid, which is a good thing and a bad thing, because I mean while getting it out isn't too much of a problem, it leaves a bit of a residue which takes a bit of a clean up. But I'll show you that process again when she's all done and ready to try and be cleaned up and put back together as a complete rifle. After I do that, I'm also going to respray and re-camo paint job the entire rifle again, just because, you know, this has been like this now for a couple of years. It's starting to get a bit worn in a few places, so we'll do that as well, and we'll show you how that's done. Alright guys, until the next vid, stay safe and happy and safe hunting. Take care guys.